I'm so excited to be talking to Sarah. Sarah and I met in 2018, and I remember the exact moment when she blew my mind. We were standing in the driveway of one of our campaign colleagues, and she just uh, blurted out all the information that she needed, all the lists that she needed, and everything that needed to get done within the next week. I was blown away. This is her work ethic. This is who Sarah is, and she has created an amazing political career because of that. Let's talk about creating a life and country we're proud of together. I'm your host, Alvina Vasquez. Welcome to Alvina Talks Shift. So Sarah, I'm so glad that you're here with me.
Alvina, this is so fun because not only do I get to talk to you, which I do on a regular basis, but we get to talk about politics and all the things about being a mom in politics. And yeah, love Alvina. You're amazing. You're a super boss lady and love you and excited to be here.
Thank you. First, let's talk about the baby, welcoming a baby into this political life that you're living. How is that going? Because I'm also, going through that process. What is that like for you?
So obviously Alvina knows this, but for those who are listening, I had a baby when I was managing a gubernatorial campaign last year, which in itself is like a whole other conversation. But it's been a wild ride since then. My son is now 14 months old. It's been a crazy 14 months, especially being in this industry of politics. I would say, especially for women, this industry is not very forgiving for moms in general, for parents in general. And so it's been challenging to navigate. And, I find that there's people that are in their, late teens, early 20s, and then there's folks that are much older, and then everyone in between that's kind of going through this stage of life. There's not many of us, and especially not a lot of women. And so, obviously connecting with people like Alvina on just like the challenges of the day to day. For instance, like 5 to 7 p.m. is off limits. That's bedtime. That's, reading books, bath time, eating dinner, all the things to get ready for the day ahead. And sometimes we just have calls at all hours of the night in politics. And so that's just like one example of how you have to set those boundaries. But it's been challenging, but also wonderful. My son Teddy just makes everything more fun. And when I'm having a bad day at work, he always makes my day better.
So let's talk about, so it sounds like all those stages that you're talking about, you've been that person in every one of those stages. What was it like when you were in your, early years, in your early 20s, jumping on campaigns, and then working your way up to managing and being the boss of these campaigns? What was that? What is that like mental transition for you?
Yeah, like many people in this industry, and when I say industry, I think it's like the whole ecosystem. It's both on, we call it the official side, which is just jargon for like the governor's office or a U.S. senator's office or a congressperson's office. And then you have the campaign side, which you think of as these like dingy field offices and strip malls, and you're making calls and knocking on doors. So I've kind of run the gambit on a bunch of different roles on both of those sides of politics. And I really started, like most people, as a field organizer, literally, well, first of all, as a volunteer, making phone calls in one of those dingy field offices, literally on the floor, talking to other women about the importance of the Affordable Care Act and why we needed to elect Barack Obama. And this was now, this was in 2011, and now fast forward to now, have done so many different things. I always say, for a young person who's interested in getting involved with politics, like, just go and volunteer, because that's the best way that you're going to learn how to connect with people, connect with voters, and you really learn all the different roles. You could be planning an event one day, and then the next day you're with the candidate, and then the next day you're knocking on doors. And so, going from, it's been a gradual change, but going from being a field organizer and knocking on, 100 doors a day and making 250 phone calls a day, which does happen. I will say, like, 100-hour work weeks are real in this
Yeah.
industry. To then managing all the different facets of a campaign, whether it's opposition research or building a comms plan and putting that into action. Or hiring and managing a really large team. It didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of hours, blood, sweat, and tears, some of those with Alvina, to get me to that, that phase of my career. And it's just been a wild ride. And honestly, I have no regrets. It's a really, really tough work to be in, but it is so rewarding at the end of the day. I've had tough losses and really amazing wins. And, I think both are worth it, even if you don't end up with the W at the end of the day.
So how do you recover? You've been on both sides of winning amazing, life-changing races to losing, and how do you recover? How do you move forward? What is the next step for you when that happens?
I mean, I think in this world, your relationships are everything. And I have built long-lasting friendships, mentors along the way. And, whether you have that win or that loss, those are the people that the next day, those are the people I'm texting headlines to. Those are the people I'm, calling and crying to or laughing to. And so, your network, and at the beginning was really small. It kind of just multiplies over the years. And I'm so grateful for the friends that I have made in this work. And, they started as colleagues, some of them started as bosses, some of them started as people I used to manage, and now, I have this kind of campaign political family that, I can go to with all of the thoughts and feelings that I may have after a tough win or a tough loss. And those are the people that I really turn to. Even if you win a campaign, that phase of your career ends and you're looking for the next thing. And so turning to those people and asking for advice and having them, help connect you to people has been really, really amazing. And, it's my mantra. This industry is about relationships. And if you keep your head down and work hard and are nice to people, usually good things happen to you. So that's like my biggest piece of advice too, is just be a nice person and, build that ecosystem around you, and you'll be okay, even if you have a big loss at the end of the day.
Well, what's fascinating to me is you talked about all of these different folks that you've began your career in politics with, and now they're all over the place working in different networks, different roles. And that goes to the types of personalities that you're looking for to build a really strong campaign. When you went from being part of a campaign to leading a campaign, what were like the personality traits and the experience that you were looking for in building that strong team?
I think it's an interesting question, because I think a lot of people don't get this right. I'm not saying I'm the best person when it comes to putting together a team, but I think it's important, whether it's like your consultant team or your campaign team, your senior staff, to like really look at the team holistically. And where people are from and what backgrounds they come from, and what experiences they hold. And it's important to just have those different perspectives on a team, especially in progressive democratic politics. I think where you get it wrong is if you're just hiring people that are just like you. You want to have a team that reflects the diversity of whatever state or whatever district you're working in. And I think that's really important. Or your candidate. Right now I work for Emily's List, and we are the largest organization to elect pro-choice Democratic women. And when I'm putting together teams or helping our campaign managers put together teams, I always say, like, make sure you have strong female voices in the room, because that is, there's a lot more strong men voices in the room in this industry. And it's so important to make sure you have those advocates for your candidate, for your campaign manager, whoever you're working for. I will say, I wouldn't say I'm a tough boss, but I have high expectations. And so I always look for people that, have that same sort of passion and drive. This work is not easy, and sometimes there's long hours and it can be very unforgiving. And so, regardless of people's backgrounds and experiences, I want to make sure that whoever I'm surrounding myself with and the team that I'm building has that same type of passion and energy and drive, and that they're going to, put their all into whatever project or event or whatever they're doing, because at the end of the day, campaigns are about winning and losing, and so you want to make sure you have your A team lined up.
And when we talk about a campaign team, there's hired staff, and then there's kind of this, it's kind of a solar system, right? We have organizations, individuals, donors that contribute all of their thoughts, their passion behind this issue or candidate that's running. So, how much influence do these outside solar system organizations have on a campaign? Because I think there's a lot of questions about that, about who's influencing the direction of a campaign, the direction of the candidate, and their issues.
When I first came into this world a long time ago, I really just thought a campaign was volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, and the field organizers, and then your candidate, and maybe like a few people in between there. And then, what I've learned over almost, the last 15 years is that it really a solar system, like you said. And, I like to describe it as like a snowflake. And you have your candidate in the middle, and then you have like all these little branches outside of that. You might have the candidate's family, right, that has an influence of the direction of the campaign and the messaging. Maybe you have like a senior advisor, or maybe this is like a best friend to the candidate. You have your campaign manager, and then you have all these other roles. You have comms, you have research, you have digital, like all the different pieces that fit. And then on top of that, something that is even, I think, more interesting in a type of work that, you and I are both in, is this like consultant industry, which is like a multi-billion-dollar industry. Who would have thought? It's very entrepreneurial, but there's like all of these people across the country that are paid to consult, right, on whatever it is. It's like how to put together an outreach plan, or how to put together a comms plan, or, message prep, all of these different things that when I first started on campaigns, I would have never even, and I was a political science major, which, by the way, doesn't matter at all if you want to work in politics. I know someone that was an astronomy major that now works in politics. But it is such an interesting ecosystem. And when you're first starting out, it's hard to navigate, but to what I was saying before, it's very gradual, right? Like, I think the best campaign people are the ones that have done all of the different roles, whether it was knocking on doors, then managing a political team, then maybe doing comms, and then, building yourself, through that experience. But it's a wild world out there, the world of consultants, as Alvina and I know very well. And, for better or for worse, it's still very much like a man's industry and a man's world. And so I think it's so important to have people like, yourself, Alvina, and, Emily's List, and organizations that, can advocate for candidates. Because when people are first running, like, they have no idea what a consultant team is, right? And so it's really important they have advocates on their side to make sure they're running the best team they possibly can. Because people are pariahs, and and that is just the way the industry is. And you have to be able to weed out, like, who are the good actors and who are the bad actors.
So let's talk what you're working on now. So you're at Emily's List, and what do we have to look forward to in 2024? With all the candidates that you've been able to meet and connect with?
Yeah, well, I think we have a lot to look forward in 2024 today, and I will get back to your question, but I was thinking about this and thinking about you. So I'm like, God, 2023 and 2024 are like the years of the woman. Like, if you look at, God, the Barbie movie, which is, by the way, just like feminism to the max. It's amazing. And then like the Taylor Swift tour, across America, and just like people are looking for things to look forward to and to get excited about. And unfortunately, politics isn't the most exciting thing because it's so divisive and so it's hard to just like track what's going on in any given day. And so I say that because there are so many amazing women candidates across the country. I focus mostly on the western part of the United States, but there's so many women candidates that have this like positive framing of why they're running, right? Like some of them weren't involved in politics until Donald Trump won in 2016. Some of them were on school board members or were on school boards and then got recalled because of critical race theory. I mean, these like crazy things that have been happening across the country, which are unfortunate, but also have like fueled this fire, especially with women who across the country are just like looking at what's happening and how doom and gloom everything feels and saying, wait a second, like I can make change and I can make a difference, and that person's in Congress, so like I can be in Congress if Marjorie Taylor Greene can do it, right? Or Lauren Boebert. So that's really exciting. Because I focus a lot on the West, I always say this, but maybe my counterparts that work in the East may disagree, but I say this to all my women, is taking back the House runs right through California. And so there's just so many exciting races in California. And then, you know, challengers, folks that are, I'm hopeful are going to flip a lot of red seats to blue. And then we also have a lot of great incumbent ladies, you know, right here in Colorado, for instance, Yadira Caraveo, Brittany Pedersen, that held onto these seats. Yadira obviously won with, I think, a 0.08% of the vote. And she's, you know, going to be a top,
pretty exciting,
a top target, again, by the Republicans. And so making sure that we hold on to those seats. And it's so important to have, you know, not only keep, you know, flip the House, but also have amazing advocates and fighters in Congress like Yadira, Brittany, and so many more. I feel very lucky to work with these badass ladies across country.
That's so exciting.
So lots to look forward to, even though it feels depressing sometimes.
Well, it is something to look forward to, because I think this is when we have to talk about, even when you don't win, you're still winning because you're moving the ball forward.
Totally.
It's just a starting point. You can run for office again. You can run for a different office. You can move to a new community and run, and, you know, maybe shifting on issues or talking about issues and bringing things up that people don't talk about. You can still move the needle if you're a woman running for office and you don't win.
Totally. I mean, I look at some of these policies that we've seen pass and just get enacted, you know, the last, I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, go into effect in the last few months. One is the Pregnancy Workers Act, one is the Pump Act, and these are, you know, and then there's a lot of new things around paid family leave. And so it's important that we remember that the reason that those bills even got presented in the first place were because of women who ran for office and now are there. And I look at someone like, oh God, I'm going to butcher her name, but I think it's Leah Gretchen. Anyway, the founder of Vote Mama. I will send you the name to make sure it gets into the podcast notes, but she ran for Congress, lost. But part of her campaign was she wanted to have some of her campaign funds go to pay for childcare, because I think she had, you know, a baby that was similar age to, you know, your son and mine. And she couldn't afford to run for Congress and also pay for childcare. And so she then started Vote Mama, which is a PAC that helps more moms run for office. And so that's just a great example of someone like who ran and, you know, didn't necessarily get successful in winning, but at the end of the day, now she's running this amazing organization that's going to help more women run for office. So I totally agree. I mean, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 cycles or election years to flip a seat or, you know, make change or pass a policy, but we have to keep doing it because then nothing will happen.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit because you have worked in the business world as well. What were the differences and the similarities that you found working at the Office of Economic Development and working with political leaders?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I hope my government friends don't get too mad at me for saying this, but I think working in politics, as I said before, is very entrepreneurial. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of room for creativity still and innovation. And not saying that there isn't room for that in government, because there absolutely is. And our amazing governor, Jared Polis, has done phenomenal work in making sure government works better for you and works quicker and more efficiently. But there's still, it's hard to change a bureaucracy of 30,000 plus employees, for instance. It's just things are going to move slower. And so that was challenging. What was exciting about that role when I was chief of staff is there was a cool kind of intersection between the business community and government. And so getting to work with the business community to find ways to partner on different projects to actually help make government work more efficiently for people was fun and interesting. Now, unfortunately, I worked at that office during COVID, so things kind of were flipped on their head. But it's just like a totally different pace, I would say, than the political world. It's probably like more forgiving, honestly, when it comes to being like a mom and a parent, but I don't find it as easy to adapt in those roles as I do in the political industry. It's just things are moving quicker, and you have to be innovative. You have to think quick on your feet, or you're going to be 5 steps behind the opponent, for instance. I don't know if that answers your question, but lots of similarities, but more differences, I would say. And I think the political world is much more fun, but there's people that disagree with me on that.
Just a personal choice.
Personal choice, yes.
What about having your partner who's also an elected official? How do you balance both of you being in politics with having a toddler at home?
If anyone has advice, please let me know, because it's challenging. We are lucky that we, are able. I mean, the childcare crisis is a crisis, and I call it a crisis because it is bad, and could be like a whole other podcast conversation. But we are lucky that we can, we have the resources to pay for childcare when we need it. But what I will say is we do it with a lot of help. In Colorado, it's a citizen legislature, so they're only in session for 4.5 months out of the year. And so for those 4.5 months, like I'm, really taking care of our son most of the time. And then in this time, my husband's able to take on more of the childcare, burden of scheduling doctor's appointments. And like this morning, he just took our son to reading time at the library, right? So we really are a team, and we make it work. It's very challenging though, and especially when we have, competing events, for instance, or competing travel schedules, and we kind of just have to compromise and figure it out. But it's a strange and hard place to be in sometimes.
Well, we're at our last question of the show. I know it goes by so fast.
I know it went by so fast.
And we kind of touched on it earlier, but I know like there are moments in our career when we've done something, especially early on in the career, when we've stayed up all night worried about it, and we look back and we're like, that was not a big deal. Is there one story you can share with us when you first started in politics that totally gutted you when you made a mistake and you totally recovered the next day?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Early on in my career, well, I would say when you're in your early 20s, you have no fucking clue what you're going to be doing, right? You kind of just, I guess there are people that know what they're doing. I don't know who those people are, but they're lying.
I think they know what they're doing.
Lying. They're lying if they say they do. And so, I mean, I remember in college, it was like this, my senior of college, and, well, no, I'm sorry. It was my sophomore year. I was going to my junior year. I took time off to work for the Obama campaign. And when I did that, I was like, I never want to go back to college. Like, why do I need to go back to college? I'm making $27,000 a year. Like, I can afford, I'm rich. And I like so desperately did not want to go back to school. And and was actually offered 2 different political jobs. And I said no to both of them to finish my degree. And I remember I was just like, it wasn't even like up at night for one night. It was like many nights and weeks where I was like, oh my God, I'm making the worst decision ever. Like, I should go do that. And like, I don't know where my life would be if I ended up, taking whatever regional field director job or campaign manager for a, congressional, whatever, the choices were. But I ended up, going back to school, finishing my degree, and then moving to Washington, D.C. right after that. And it was like not a big deal, right? I think probably my career would be on the same trajectory than it is now. And it was important for me to just, as much as I think getting the credential is silly and sometimes feels like a waste of money, I think is important, especially as a young woman, because no one can take away that, no one can take that away from you. But I remember I was like literally so stressed about it and was like, why would I do that? I want to go make money. I can afford Starbucks lattes now. And like in retrospect, I'm glad I finished my degree. It's ridiculous.
Well, awesome. Well, I think we have so much more to talk about, so we'll definitely have you back, cover a lot more issues, a lot more stories from your amazing career. And thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Alvina. Next podcast, we can flip the script and I can interview you because you are
I would love that.
amazing.
I have so many thoughts.
Boss lady in your own right. And so, yeah. Thank you for having me on. This has been really fun.
Thank you for watching Alvina Talks Shift. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, engage, empower, evolve. If you liked this episode, or if you want more content like this, go to alvinatalkshift.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.